Okay, so finally, for uh, for space, um, for men in space, human beings are, our greatest resource that we have. Life is our greatest resource. Human beings are our greatest resource that we have when we're in space and doing these things, because they are doing the labor that is required, to produce the power that allows us to do these things, or to complete our missions, to survive. Everything, like our gravity decks, are designed for them to live. Instead of having the eye problems and the bone density loss problems of zero gravity, instead of all these things, we want to make sure that first and foremost, the health and survival of our people is the most important. Now, when it comes to armor, the primary purpose of all armor has always been the survival of being hit by something. From the first armor to the last, it's always been that the armor would make the wearer of it survive the hit. And as weapons were developed over time, on the timeline, the armor had to become more advanced. But after gunpowder, after guns, the men had to lose the armor, because all they could do was hide. So the armor became hiding in the trenches and dexterity rather than the steel plating, until the invention of tanks. That became the new armor. But through all this time, all of the armor has always been to block the hit, to block it and prevent the penetration through the armor to the vulnerable person. But because the primary purpose of armor is the survivability of the person wearing it, we can completely rethink the concept of what we're doing with it. We don't need a steel plate. The purpose of the armor is the survival of the wearer, right? So we want to create a Hardsuit reactive armor that doesn't deflect the bullet, it doesn't stop the bullet. It allows the bullet to penetrate the armor, and yeah, you're going to take the damage. But once it penetrates the armor, it's going to react by immediately administering first aid to that location. Now, first aid is, it's going to apply pressure to stop the bleeding. It's going to create a tourniquet to cut off the vein from bleeding out. It's going to become hard to make it a cast. All for survivability of the wearer of the armor. It's going to create a psychological advantage for a person scared to death on the battlefield, or scared to death in space. Because in space, and remember, we're going multiples of C. If suddenly there's a random floating dust particle out there and it's going to penetrate your arm, and boom, you're dead, because you were outside doing a spacewalk. But if you have the Hardsuit, reactive first aid armor, it's going to have an instant compression system that reacts with the hit of the armor, or reacts with the hit of the projectile, seals the hole in the armor, and then instantly compresses down on the limb to stop the bleeding. And if needed, a ripcord can be pulled to add the tourniquet. Now, taking this new form of armor on the timeline, we can produce it to add to the outer hull of our ship, so that our ship crashes into a dust particle at multiples of speed, and boom, it inflates and seals the breach. That's Navelle, Navelle. That's space to me, because water is the ancient road, right? And space is the new road. It's a road. It's the path of least resistance. But so in naval, Naval, in naval ships, we can also have the armor on our vessels. Okay, we could do an experiment. Once we make the armor, we can make a little floating ball, right? And it'll look like a soccer ball. So like each section of the Hardsuit Reactive armor is going to have its own group of chemicals or whatever it is that reacts once the projectile goes into it, inflates, hardens instantly, and seals the breach to keep it afloat. You float that little soccer ball out there and you shoot it with the machine gun. And see how many times it takes for it to hit. How many times is it going to take to hit, you know? In all those different sections. Boom, psh, boom, psh. It's going to keep floating until you hit it in the same spot. Boom, 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 boom. So going forward, the Hardsuit Reactive armor is the best bet for space and to keep vessels afloat and to protect our crew, who are our men, who are the most important thing. You know, and all the other stuff, I mean, we can add to it, like, you know, breach beacons, like, you know, if somebody's hit, boom, I mean, it's gonna show up on the monitor, and we're gonna know, you know, so, you know.